The station was loud and dirty and full of creatures that Yuna Park had never seen before. She stood near the repair dock with her bag over her shoulder and watched the mechanics argue about her shuttle. They spoke in clicks and whistles that her translator could barely understand, but she understood enough. The engine was dead. The parts would take 2 weeks to arrive. She was stuck. Ravan Station floated at the edge of known space. It was a place where traders came to sell things that other stations would not allow. It was not dangerous exactly, but it was not safe either. Yuna was a xenobiologist. She studied alien species. She had spent 3 years working on a diplomatic survey ship, learning about the different creatures that filled the galaxy. But she had never been alone like this before. She found a small food stall and bought something that looked like soup. It tasted like metal and salt. She ate it anyway because she did not know when she would eat again. Her money was running low. The station did not accept human credits, and the exchange rate was terrible. A shadow fell over her table. Yuna looked up and felt her stomach drop. The creature standing before her was massive. It stood over 2 meters tall with gray skin that looked like leather. Its eyes were yellow and split down the middle like a cat. Muscles covered every part of its body. Its hands ended in claws that could tear through steel. She knew this species. Everyone knew this species. The Korath. They were predators. Real predators. They had conquered 12 worlds before joining Galactic Society, and they had only joined because fighting the combined fleets of 100 species was bad for business. Most aliens considered them barely civilized. Stories said they still ate their enemies on their home world. The Korath looked down at her with an expression she could not read. Then it spoke. Its voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. "You are the human with the broken ship." It was not a question. Yuna nodded slowly. "Yes. I am waiting for parts. 2 weeks is a long time to wait on Ravan." The Korath tilted its head. "You have no pack. No protection. The slavers will notice you soon." Yuna felt cold. She had not thought about that. A lone human female on a station like this would attract attention. Bad attention. "I will manage," she said. Her voice was steady, even though her heart was beating fast. The Korath made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You are brave for a prey creature. Or stupid. I cannot tell which." It paused for a moment. "My ship leaves tomorrow. We travel toward the inner systems. If you need passage, you may come." "We have an empty storage room." Yuna stared at the creature. This made no sense. The Korath did not help strangers. They certainly did not help humans. "Why?" she asked. The Korath showed its teeth. It was not a smile. "Because watching you try to survive here would be amusing, but my mate would call it cruel. She has strange ideas about kindness." It turned to leave. "The ship is called Donby. Dock 7. Be there before sunrise, or we leave without you." Then it was gone. Yuna sat alone with her cold soup and tried to think. She could stay on the station and hope for the best. Or she could board a ship full of apex predators and hope they did not eat her. Neither option was good. But the Korath had been right about one thing. 2 weeks was a long time. She had already noticed eyes watching her from dark corners. Hungry eyes. Calculating eyes. She finished her soup and made her decision. The Donby was not what Yuna expected. She had imagined something military and sharp, full of weapons and armor. Instead, the ship was old and worn, and clearly built for cargo, not war. The hull was scratched and dented from years of hard travel. It looked tired. The Korath who greeted her at the airlock was different from the one in the food stall. This one was female, slightly smaller, with darker gray skin and eyes that held something almost like warmth. "You are the human," the female said. "I am Mira. My mate Varric told me you would come." She looked Yuna up and down with clear curiosity. "You are smaller than I expected. And softer. How do your people survive without claws or fangs?" Yuna had heard this question before from other species. It never stopped being annoying. "We find other ways," she said simply. Mira made a humming sound. "Interesting. Come. I will show you where you will sleep." The ship's interior was dim and warm. The air smelled like metal and something musky that Yuna guessed was Korath scent. They passed through narrow corridors lined with pipes and wires. Other Korath watched from doorways as she walked by. Their eyes followed her like she was something strange and fascinating. Or possibly something tasty. Yuna counted 12 crew members in total. All of them were large. All of them had claws and teeth that could kill her in seconds. She kept her face calm and her breathing steady. Predators could smell fear. She would not give them that satisfaction. Her room was small. It had been a storage closet before, and it still smelled like old chemicals. But there was a bed, and a small desk, and a door that locked from the inside. That was enough. "The communal area is at the end of this corridor," Mira said. "We eat together at evening. You may join us if you wish, but you are not required. Some of the crew may not welcome your presence." "I understand," Yuna said. Mira studied her for a long moment. "You are not afraid." "I am terrified," Yuna admitted. "But I have learned that showing fear does not help." The Korath female made that humming sound again. "Perhaps your species is not as soft as it appears." She turned to leave, then stopped. "A warning, human. My mate is the alpha of this ship. His word is law. Do not challenge him. Do not question him. And do not interfere with pack business. If you follow these rules, you will survive the journey." "What happens if I break them?" Mira's eyes went cold. "Then, I cannot protect you." The door closed, and Yuna was alone. She sat on the bed and let out a long breath. Her hands were shaking now that no one could see. She was on a ship full of creatures that saw her as prey. Every instinct told her to run, to hide, to find safety. But there was no safety here. There was only survival. Yuna opened her bag and pulled out her research tablet. If she was going to live among predators, she would learn everything about them. Their behavior, their culture, their weaknesses. She was a scientist. Observation was what she did best. Over the next 3 days, Yuna watched and learned. The Korath had a strict social order based on strength and dominance. Varric was at the top as alpha. His word was final in all matters. Below him was Mira, and then the senior crew members, ranked by their ability to fight and lead. At the bottom were the cubs. There were 2 of them. Torak was the older one, male, almost fully grown. He was aggressive and loud and constantly trying to prove himself to the adults. Sayla was younger and female, smaller than her brother but with clever eyes that missed nothing. They were Varric and Mira's children, and they were in the middle of something the Korath called the ranking phase. Yuna learned about this by listening at mealtimes. Young Korath had to establish their place in the pack through combat. They would fight each other, and sometimes the adults, until everyone knew exactly where they stood. It was violent and brutal, but it was how their species had survived for thousands of years. She also learned that the crew thought she was pathetic. They did not hide their contempt. They called her soft skin and grass eater, and laughed when she struggled to open the heavy doors. Varric ignored her completely, treating her like furniture that happened to move. Only Mira showed her any kindness. The female would sometimes sit with her at meals and ask questions about human culture. She seemed genuinely curious about how such a weak species had managed to spread across the stars. Yuna answered honestly. She talked about human history, about their wars, and their science, and their stubborn refusal to die. She did not brag. She simply stated facts, and every night, she returned to her room and added to her notes. She was learning things about the Korath that no human had ever documented before. Their social structure, their body language, the subtle ways they communicated dominance and submission. She was also learning their weaknesses, not because she planned to use them, but because knowledge was power. And on this ship, power might be the only thing that could keep her alive. The trouble started on the 4th night. Yuna was sitting in her usual corner of the communal area, eating a bowl of bland protein paste that was the only food on the ship her stomach could handle. The Korath ate meat. Raw meat, red and dripping, and sometimes still moving. She had learned to look away during their meals. The crew was gathered around the main table, talking in low growls about their next trading stop. Varric sat at the head, his massive form casting shadows across the room. Mira was beside him, quiet and watchful. The two cubs were at the far end, separated from the adults by tradition. Yuna had been watching Torak and Sayla for days now. She could see the tension building between them, like pressure in a sealed container. Torak was bigger and stronger. But Sayla was smarter. She would dodge his attacks and strike at his weak points and make him look foolish in front of the others. This made Torak angry. Very angry. Tonight, that anger finally broke free. It started with a simple insult. Torak said something about Sayla being too weak to earn a real rank. Sayla responded by questioning whether Torak's brain was as small as his fighting skill. The crew laughed. Torak's eyes went dark with rage. He lunged across the table. Sayla was fast, but not fast enough. Torak caught her by the shoulder and threw her to the ground. They rolled together in a tangle of claws and teeth, snarling and snapping. The adults pulled back to give them room. This was normal. This was how young Korath settled their differences, but Yuna could see something the others could not. Or maybe, they could see it, and simply did not care. Torak was not fighting for dominance anymore. He was fighting to kill. His eyes had changed. They were not the eyes of a brother teaching a sister her place. They were the eyes of a predator that had found prey. Every strike was aimed at vital points. Throat, eyes, belly. He was not trying to make Sayla submit. He was trying to make her dead. Sayla knew it too. Yuna could see the fear in the young female's movements. She was no longer fighting back. She was just trying to survive. But Torak was too strong and too fast, and too lost in his rage to stop. He pinned her to the floor with his full weight, his claws pressed against her throat. Blood was already flowing from a dozen small wounds on her body. She whimpered and tried to push him off, but she was too tired, too hurt. Yuna looked at the adults. None of them moved. Varric watched with cold yellow eyes. His face showed nothing. Mira stood beside him, her claws digging into her own palms, hard enough to draw blood. But she did not step forward. Neither did anyone else. Yuna did not understand. How could they just watch? How could parents watch their son kill their daughter and do nothing? Torak raised his claws for the final strike. Sayla closed her eyes, and Yuna moved. She did not think about what she was doing. She did not consider the consequences. She simply saw a child about to die, and her body reacted before her mind could catch up. She crossed the room in 3 quick steps. Her hands closed around Torak's arm just as it started to come down. She pulled with everything she had, twisting her body to add momentum. The young Korath weighed almost twice as much as her, but physics did not care about size. Leverage and technique mattered more. Torak flew sideways. He hit the ground hard and rolled twice before coming to a stop against the far wall. The room went completely silent. Yuna stood over Sayla's bleeding body. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Every Korath in the room was staring at her with expressions of pure shock. She had just done something terrible. She knew that now. She had broken some rule, crossed some line that should never be crossed. But she did not care. The girl at her feet was still breathing. That was all that mattered. Torak rose to his feet. His shock was already turning to rage. How dare this weak little creature touch him? How dare this prey animal interfere in a fight between predators? He would tear her apart. He would show everyone what happened to things that forgot their place. He charged. Yuna saw him coming. She had been watching Korath fight for days. She knew how they moved, how they attacked, how they expected their enemies to react. They expected fear. They expected their prey to run or freeze or beg for mercy. She did none of those things. She stepped to the side at the last moment, grabbed his wrist as it passed her face, and twisted. The movement was simple. Every human child learned something like it in self-defense class. You took your opponent's momentum and used it against them. You found the weak points in their joints and applied pressure. Torak's body followed his arm. He had no choice. The bones in his wrist were strong, but they were not designed to bend that way. Either he moved with the twist or something would break. He crashed to his knees with a sound of pain and confusion. Yuna held his wrist in both hands. She could feel his pulse racing under her fingers. She could feel the bones shifting as she increased the pressure. One more twist. One more push. And his wrist would shatter like dry wood. She did not twist. She did not push. She simply held him there and waited. The room was so quiet she could hear Sayla's ragged breathing behind her. Every Korath was frozen in place. They stared at her like she had grown a second head. Like she was something impossible, something that should not exist. Varric stepped forward. His voice was a low growl that vibrated through the floor. "Release my son." Yuna looked up at him. She met his eyes directly. She knew this was a challenge. She knew it might get her killed. But she also knew that looking away would be worse. "He was going to kill her," she said. Her voice was calm, steady. It surprised even her. "That is our way. Not while I am watching." Silence stretched between them like a wire pulled tight. Varric's claws flexed. The muscles in his arms bunched as if preparing to strike. Yuna did not move. She did not blink. She kept her grip on Torak's wrist and waited to see if she would live or die. Something changed in Varric's eyes. The anger was still there, but something else joined it. Something that looked almost like curiosity. "You know I could kill you," he said slowly. "You know everyone in this room could kill you. Why do you not run? Why do you not beg?" Yuna considered the question. It deserved an honest answer. "Because running would not save me," she said. "And begging would not change your mind. So there is no point in either." Varric studied her for a long moment. Then he made a sound that was almost like a laugh. "You are strange, human. Very strange. I have been told that before." He gestured with one massive hand. "Release him. He has learned his lesson for tonight." In the word, end quote. Yuna let go of Torak's wrist. The young Korath scrambled backward, cradling his arm against his chest. His eyes burned with hatred and shame. She had humiliated him in front of the entire pack. He would not forget that. She did not care. She turned and knelt beside Sayla. The young female was still breathing, but her wounds were bad. "She needs medical attention," Yuna said. "She will heal," Varric replied. "Korath are strong. She will heal faster with proper treatment." Yuna looked at Mira. "I have some training in xenobiology. I know how to treat wounds. Will you let me help her?" Mira glanced at her mate. Something passed between them that Yuna could not read. Then Mira nodded slowly. "Help her," she said. "But understand that this changes nothing. You interfered in pack business. There will be consequences." Yuna accepted this. She had known there would be consequences from the moment she moved. But some things were more important than consequences. She gathered Sayla in her arms and carried her toward the medical bay. The young Korath was heavier than she looked, all dense muscle and thick bone. But Yuna was stronger than she looked too. Humans were good at hiding their strength. They had learned long ago that appearing weak could be an advantage. As she walked out of the communal area, she felt Varric's eyes on her back. He was watching her, measuring her, trying to understand what he had just seen. A prey creature had stopped a predator with her bare hands. A soft-skinned human had brought a Korath to his knees without drawing blood. That should not have been possible, and yet it was. In his mind, Varric replayed the moment when Yuna had grabbed Torak's arm. He remembered the way her fingers had closed around his flesh. He had seen her knuckles go white with pressure. He had heard the small pop of tendons straining. She had not just restrained his son. She had done it easily, casually, like it was nothing, like she could have done much worse if she wanted to. Varric looked down at his own claws. He had killed many enemies with these hands. He had torn through armor and flesh and bone without effort. He was an alpha, a predator, the top of the food chain, but for the first time in his life, he wondered if that was really true. Sayla's wounds were deep but clean. Yuna worked through the night, cleaning and sealing each cut, with the supplies she found in the ship's basic medical kit. The Korath did not believe in fancy medical technology. Their bodies healed fast on their own. But fast healing did not mean painless healing, and it did not mean safe healing. Yuna used everything she knew about alien biology to help the young female. She applied antiseptic to prevent infection. She used adhesive strips to hold the worst cuts closed. She even managed to find something that worked like a painkiller in the ship's supplies, though she had to guess at the correct dose. By morning, Sayla was stable. Her breathing was even, and her color looked better. She would recover. She would have scars, but she would live. Mira came to check on her daughter just as Yuna was finishing. The older Korath stood in the doorway and watched in silence for a long moment. "You did not sleep," Mira said finally. "No." Yuna wiped her hands on a cloth. "I wanted to make sure she was stable before I rested. Why do you care what happens to her? She is not your pack. She is not even your species." Yuna considered the question. It was the same question Varric had asked in a different way. Why did she help? Why did she risk herself for strangers? "Because she is young," Yuna said at last. "Because she was hurt. Because I could help, and no one else was going to." She paused. "Where I come from, those are the only reasons we need." Mira made a low sound in her throat. "Your species is strange. You act like prey, but you do not think like prey. You act like you have nothing to fear, even when you are surrounded by things that could destroy you." "We have plenty to fear," Yuna admitted. "We just learned a long time ago that fear does not keep us safe. Only action keeps us safe." The older female stepped closer. Her yellow eyes studied Yuna with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "What you did last night should not have been possible. Torak is young, but he is still Korath. He is stronger than you, faster than you. His bones are denser, his muscles are thicker. And yet you threw him across the room like he weighed nothing." "Not nothing," Yuna said. "It was actually quite hard. Do not joke with me, human." Mira's voice dropped to something cold and serious. "I have watched you since you came aboard. You move carefully. You keep your head down. You make yourself small and quiet and easy to ignore. But last night I saw something different. Last night I saw what you really are." Yuna went very still. "And what is that?" "I do not know yet." Mira's claws clicked against the floor as she shifted her weight. "But I intend to find out." She left without another word. Yuna let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. The next few days were tense. The crew watched her differently now. Before, they had looked at her with contempt. Now they looked at her with something closer to uncertainty. They did not know what to make of her. She had broken their understanding of how the universe worked, and they did not like it. Torak avoided her completely. Whenever she entered a room, he left it. He could not even look at her without his face twisting with shame and anger. His wrist had healed quickly thanks to Korath biology. But his pride would take much longer. Sayla was the opposite. Once she was strong enough to move around again, she followed Yuna like a shadow. She asked endless questions about humans. How did they hunt? How did they fight? How had they spread across the stars without claws or fangs or armor? Yuna answered honestly. She explained that humans were persistence hunters. They did not run down their prey with speed or overwhelm it with strength. They followed it. For hours. For days, if necessary. They walked and walked and walked until their prey collapsed from exhaustion. Then they killed it. Sayla found this fascinating and terrifying in equal measure. "You just follow them until they die?" "Until they cannot run anymore," Yuna corrected. "Then we finish it quickly. We are not cruel. We just do not give up." "That is the scariest thing I have ever heard." Yuna smiled slightly. "It worked for thousands of years. Our ancestors hunted animals much larger and more dangerous than themselves. They did not need to be stronger. They just needed to be more patient." She also explained about human hands. This was something most aliens never thought about. Korath claws were impressive, but they were designed for one purpose: tearing. Human hands were different. They could grip with incredible force. They could manipulate tiny objects with perfect precision. They could throw things with enough power to kill. And they could apply pressure to exact points with devastating effect. When I grabbed your brother, Yuna said, I was not using strength. I was using his strength against him. Human fighting styles are built around this idea. We cannot match most species in raw power. So we learned to redirect power instead. Sayla listened with wide eyes. Can you teach me? Maybe, if your father allows it. But Varric had not spoken to Yuna since that night. He watched her from across rooms. He studied her during meals. But he never approached her. And she was not brave enough to approach him. Until the 5th night after the fight. She was alone in the communal area, eating a late meal because she had been working on her research notes. The lights were dim, and the ship was quiet. Most of the crew was asleep. Then Varric appeared in the doorway. He did not say anything at first. He just stood there, massive and silent, watching her with those yellow predator eyes. Yuna's heart started beating faster, but she forced herself to stay calm. She took another bite of her food and waited. Finally, he spoke. Come with me. Come with me. It was not a request. Yuna set down her bowl and followed him through the corridors to a part of the ship she had never seen before. His private quarters. The room was larger than hers, but still simple. A wide sleeping platform, a desk covered in data pads, weapons mounted on the walls, trophies from hunts. This was the den of an alpha, sparse and functional. Varric turned to face her. In the dim light, he looked even more dangerous than usual. His shadow filled half the room. I have been thinking about what happened, he said. I have been trying to understand it. Oma, and? Yuna kept her voice steady. When you grabbed my son's arm, you could have broken it. Yes. When you held his wrist, you could have crushed it. Yes, but you did not. Varric's head tilted slightly. Why? Yuna chose her words carefully. Because breaking his arm would not have taught him anything. Because causing permanent damage to a child is wrong. Because I only needed to stop him, not destroy him. You held back. Yes. Varric was silent for a long moment. Then he said something that surprised her. Among my people, holding back is seen as weakness. If you can kill an enemy, you should kill them. Leaving them alive only gives them the chance to come back stronger. Among my people, it is the opposite. Yuna met his eyes directly. We believe that showing mercy when you have power is the greatest strength. Anyone can destroy. It takes something more to choose not to. That makes no sense. Maybe. But it is how we have survived. Varric moved closer. He was so large that Yuna had to crane her neck to keep looking at his face. This close. She could smell him. Metal and musk, and something wild. Every instinct screamed at her to run. But she held her ground. Show me, he said. Show you what? Your strength. He held out one massive arm, his hand open. I want to understand what you are. What your species is. Show me what you can do. Yuna hesitated. This could be a trap. If she showed him her full strength, he might decide she was too dangerous to live. But if she refused, he might take it as an insult, or worse, as confirmation that she was hiding something. She reached out and wrapped both hands around his wrist. It was thick. Her fingers could barely close around it. She could feel the dense bone and heavy muscle beneath his leathery skin. Then she squeezed. Varric's eyes widened slightly. She saw surprise flicker across his face. Then she twisted her grip, applying pressure to the points where joints met and tendons connected. The same technique she had used on Torak. The alpha of the Danby grunted in pain. His arm trembled. He tried to pull away and found that he could not. This tiny creature, this soft-skinned prey animal, was holding him in place with nothing but her hands. Yuna held the grip for 3 seconds. Then she let go and stepped back. Varric stared at his own arm like it belonged to a stranger. He flexed his fingers slowly, testing the joint. Nothing was damaged. But Yuna knew he could feel the ghost of her pressure. He would feel it for hours. Your grip, he said slowly. It is like stone. Human hands are designed for gripping, Yuna explained. We evolved to hold tools, to climb, to carry. Our ancestors survived because they could hold on to things and not let go. And your technique, the way you twisted, you knew exactly where to apply force. We have been studying fighting for thousands of years. Every weak point, every vulnerability, every way a body can be broken. Varric looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time, Yuna saw something new in his eyes. It was not contempt. It was not curiosity. It was respect. You are not prey, he said quietly. You never were. No, Yuna agreed. We are not. Varric sat down heavily on the edge of his sleeping platform. The movement was strange. Wrong somehow. Yuna had never seen him sit like that before. He always stood tall. He always loomed over everyone, but now he looked almost tired. Almost confused. Tell me about your people, he said. Tell me everything. Yuna remained standing. She was not sure if sitting would be seen as disrespectful or familiar. She decided to stay where she was. What do you want to know? Everything. Varric's yellow eyes found hers. How did you become what you are? How did soft creatures with no claws and no fangs and no armor rise to travel between stars? How did prey become something that can make predators kneel? It was a big question. The biggest question. Really. Yuna had studied xenobiology for years. She had learned about dozens of species and how they evolved. But explaining humanity was different. Explaining humanity meant confronting all the beautiful and terrible things her species had done. She took a deep breath and began. A long time ago, on our home world, we were prey. You are right about that. We were small and weak compared to the things that hunted us. Big cats with fangs longer than my hand, wolves that hunted in packs, bears that could crush a skull with one swipe. We should have died. We should have been just another species that went extinct because the world was too dangerous. But you did not. No. We did not. Yuna paused, organizing her thoughts. We changed. Not physically. We never grew claws or fangs or armor. We grew something else. We grew patience and endurance and the ability to work together. She told him about persistence hunting. About how humans would track an animal for days, walking slowly, never stopping, never losing the trail. The animal would run and rest, but the humans never stopped coming. Eventually the animal would collapse from exhaustion, and the humans would finish it with simple weapons. We did not need to be fast, Yuna explained. We only needed to be relentless. Varric listened without interrupting. His expression was unreadable, but his attention was complete. Yuna continued. She told him about human hands. About the grip strength that could crush bones if needed. About the precision that could thread a needle or throw a spear across 100 meters with deadly accuracy. About the ability to make tools and weapons and machines. Our bodies were weak, she said. So we made our tools strong. First sticks and stones, then metal and fire, then machines that could move mountains and cross oceans, and eventually machines that could carry us to other worlds. Tools, Varric repeated the word like it tasted strange in his mouth. You survived because you could make things. Partly. But that is not the whole story. Yuna hesitated. This next part was harder to explain. Harder to admit. We also survived because we were violent. Very violent. More violent than most species in the galaxy can imagine. Varric's eyes sharpened with interest. Go on. We fought each other. Constantly. For thousands of years. We made war on ourselves. We developed better and better ways to kill. Swords. Guns. Bombs. Eventually we created weapons that could destroy entire cities in a single flash. Weapons that could poison the air and water for generations. Weapons that could end all life on our planet. The silence stretched. Varric did not look shocked exactly. But there was something new in his expression. Something that might have been horror. You created weapons to destroy your own world? Yes. Yuna's voice was soft. We came very close to using them several times. There were moments when the survival of our entire species depended on a handful of individuals choosing not to press a button. Why would you create such things? Because we could. Because we were afraid of each other. Because the same intelligence that let us make tools also let us make nightmares. Yuna looked down at her hands. Humans are capable of incredible kindness and incredible cruelty. We can sacrifice everything to save a stranger or burn down the world over a small insult. We are not consistent. We are not predictable. We are sometimes not even sane. Varric was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, almost respectful. And yet you stopped. What? You had weapons that could end everything, but you did not use them. You are still here. Your species is still alive. He leaned forward. How? How did prey creatures with the power to destroy themselves choose not to? Yuna thought about the question. She had asked it herself many times during her studies of human history. How had they survived the atomic age? How had they pulled back from the edge again and again? We learned, she said finally. Slowly. Painfully. We learned that destruction is easy but building is hard. We learned that killing your enemies just creates new enemies. We learned that the strongest thing you can do is sometimes to not use your strength at all. Restraint, Varric said. Yes. Restraint. The ability to say, I could destroy this, but I choose not to. That became our greatest strength. Not our weapons, not our technology, our ability to hold back. The alpha of the Danby stared at her for a long moment. She could see him processing this information, comparing it to everything he knew about the universe, trying to fit this new understanding of humanity into his existing view of predators and prey. When you stopped Torak, he said slowly, you were not being weak, you were being strong. The way you understand strength. Yes. You could have broken his arm. You could have crippled him. But you chose mercy instead. Because you were strong enough to make that choice. Yes, Varric nodded slowly. Among my people, the strongest alpha is the one who can defeat all challengers. But what you are describing is different. You are saying the strongest alpha is the one who does not need to defeat challengers. The one whose power is so obvious that no one would dare challenge them in the first place. Yuna considered this. It was not exactly what she had meant, but it was close enough. Something like that. In human society, the most powerful leaders are not always the ones who fight the most. Sometimes they are the ones who do not need to fight at all. Their strength is assumed, accepted. No one questions it, because questioning it would be pointless. Supreme dominance, Varric murmured. So complete that violence becomes unnecessary. We call it different things: respect, authority, sometimes just fear. Yuna shrugged slightly. The effect is the same. When everyone knows you could destroy them but you choose not to, they tend to cooperate. The alpha rose from the platform. He moved to his desk and stood with his back to her, looking at the weapons mounted on the wall. Trophies from battles. Proof of his strength. I have killed many enemies, he said quietly. I have defeated every challenger. I thought that made me strong. But now I wonder. He turned back to face her. You held my son's life in your hands, and you gave it back. You held my wrist and could have shattered it, but you did not. You have power, and you do not use it. By your own measure, that makes you stronger than me. Yuna shook her head. It is not a competition. Everything is a competition. That is the truth of the universe. Maybe. But it does not have to be a competition to the death. It can be a competition to see who can build more, who can help more, who can create more. She stepped closer to him. Your species conquered 12 worlds by force. Mine spread across thousands by cooperation. Both methods work, but only one of them does not leave enemies behind. Varric's jaw tightened. She had touched something sensitive, some wound in Korath history that she did not fully understand. We have enemies, he admitted. Many enemies. They remember what we did to their worlds. They wait for us to weaken, so they can take revenge. And how long can you stay strong enough to hold them off? The question hung in the air between them. Varric did not answer, but she could see the truth in his eyes. He was worried. Despite all his power, despite all his dominance, he lived in fear of what would happen when his people could no longer fight. Humans have enemies too, Yuna said gently. We have done terrible things to each other and to other species. But we have also learned how to turn enemies into allies. How to heal old wounds. How to build relationships based on more than just fear. How? By showing them that we can be trusted. By keeping our promises. By helping them when they need help and not asking for anything in return. She smiled slightly. By proving that strength can be generous as well as destructive. Varric was silent for a long moment. Then he did something that surprised her completely. He laughed. It was a deep, rumbling sound that shook the walls. Not mocking, not cruel. Just genuine amusement. And maybe something like relief. You are a strange creature, Yuna Park, he said. You come onto my ship looking like food. And you leave me questioning everything I thought I knew about strength and weakness, and what it means to be a predator. I did not mean to cause trouble. No. I think perhaps you did exactly what you meant to do. His yellow eyes gleamed. You showed me something new. And for that, I thank you. He moved to the door and opened it. You should rest. Tomorrow we reach the trading station where you will find your new ship. But before you go, I want you to know something. Yuna waited. You have changed the way I see humans, Varric said. I do not know yet what that means for my people. But I will think on it. And I will remember what you taught me tonight. Yuna bowed her head slightly. A gesture of respect between equals. Then she walked back to her small room and closed the door behind her. She did not sleep for a long time. She just sat on her bed and thought about everything that had happened. About predators and prey. About strength and restraint. About the long, strange history of humanity and all the terrible, wonderful things her species had done. And she wondered if maybe, just maybe, this was how change happened. Not through war, not through conquest, but through understanding. One conversation at a time. The trading station appeared on the ship's screens like a jewel floating in the darkness. It was smaller than Raven but cleaner. More organized. Human ships docked here regularly. Yuna could see several familiar designs among the vessels attached to the station's arms. She stood in the observation room and watched as the Donby approached. Her bag was packed. Her research notes were saved. Everything was ready for her to leave. She should have been relieved. She should have been counting the minutes until she could walk off this ship and back into human space. Instead, she felt something strange. Something like sadness. The past week had changed her. She had come aboard as a stranded traveler. Desperate and afraid. She was leaving as something else. She was not sure what exactly. But she was different now. Footsteps behind her. Heavy. Familiar. She did not need to turn around to know who it was. The docking will take 1 hour, Varric said. Then you will be free to go. Thank you. Yuna kept her eyes on the station. For everything. For giving me shelter when you did not have to. It was nothing. You were entertainment. She could hear the slight humor in his voice, a sound she never would have expected when she first came aboard. My crew has not been this confused in years. They still do not know what to think of you. And what do you think of me? Varric moved to stand beside her. His reflection appeared in the observation window, massive and dark against the stars. I think you are the most dangerous creature I have ever met. Yuna finally looked at him. I am not dangerous. You are the most dangerous kind of dangerous. His yellow eyes met hers. You are dangerous because you do not look dangerous, because you seem soft and weak and easy to destroy, and then you reveal what you really are. And by then, it is too late. She did not know how to respond to that. Varric continued, I have fought many enemies, species with claws longer than my arm. species with armor that could stop bullets, species with poisons that could kill with a touch. I respected all of them. I feared none of them. He paused. But you, Una Park, you, I fear. Why? Because you showed me that strength is not what I thought it was. Because you made me question everything I believed about predators and prey. Because you held my son's life in your hands and gave it back like it was nothing. He shook his head slowly. I do not fear your body. I do not fear your hands. I fear what your species could do if it ever decided to stop being kind. Una was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something she had been thinking about for days. We will never stop being kind. That is the whole point. How can you be sure? Because we learned what happens when we are not kind. We saw the darkness inside ourselves, and we chose to turn away from it. We built our entire civilization around that choice. Every law, every tradition, every belief, it all comes back to the same idea. We have the power to destroy, so we must have the wisdom to protect instead. Varric made a low sound. Not quite a growl, not quite a laugh, something in between. Your species is very strange. I know. They stood in silence as the station grew larger in the window. Soon the docking clamps would engage. Soon she would walk through the airlock and leave this ship forever. But before that happened, there was something else. The door to the observation room opened. Una turned and saw Torak standing in the entrance. His face was difficult to read. There was anger there, still. But also something else. Something that might have been shame. Or maybe respect. He walked toward her slowly. His movements were careful, controlled. Nothing like the wild rage she had seen in the communal room. He stopped 2 meters away and stood there for a long moment, not speaking. Then he did something she did not expect. He bowed his head. Among the Korath, this was a gesture of acknowledgement. Not submission exactly. More like recognition. An admission that someone else had earned the right to be seen as an equal. You could have broken my arm, Torak said. His voice was rough, reluctant, but the words came anyway. You could have crushed my wrist. You could have killed me while I was on my knees. Yes, Una said simply. Why did you not? She thought about all the things she could say. About restraint and strength and the human capacity for mercy. About the lessons her species had learned through thousands of years of war and peace. About the choice that every person must make when they have power over another life. But in the end, she said something simpler. Because someday you will be Alpha. And when you are, I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that strength is not about what you can destroy. It is about what you choose to protect. Torak stared at her. His eyes were wide. Young. She had forgotten how young he really was. Barely more than a child by human standards. Still learning. Still growing. Still deciding what kind of creature he wanted to be. He did not say anything else. He just stepped aside and let her pass. At the airlock, Una found Sayla waiting. The young female looked better now. Her wounds had healed into pale scars that crossed her gray skin like silver rivers. She would carry them for the rest of her life. Reminders of what her brother had almost done. Reminders of what a human had done to save her. Sayla reached into a pouch at her belt and pulled out something small. She pressed it into Una's hand. It was a tooth. A Korath fang, carved with intricate symbols that Una did not recognize. It hung on a simple cord, designed to be worn as a necklace. What is this? Una asked. A debt marker. Sayla's voice was quiet but firm. You saved my life. Among my people, that creates a bond that cannot be broken. I owe you a life. Someday, I will repay it. Una looked down at the tooth. It was warm from Sayla's body heat, heavy with meaning she barely understood. I did not save you for repayment, she said. I know. That is why the debt is so great. Sayla pressed her hand over Una's, closing her fingers around the tooth. Keep it. Remember me. And know that wherever you go, whatever you face, you have a Korath who will come if you call. Una slipped the cord over her head and tucked the tooth under her shirt. It rested against her heart, a small piece of alien bone that represented something larger than she could fully grasp. "Thank you," she said. Sayla showed her teeth in what Yuna had learned was a Korath smile. "Thank you, Yuna Park, for showing me that not all strength comes from claws." The airlock hissed open. The station's corridor stretched beyond, bright and clean and full of familiar sounds. Human voices, human machines, human air. Yuna stepped through. Then she stopped and looked back. The entire crew of the Danbi had gathered behind her. Mira stood with her mate. Torak lingered at the edge of the group. Sayla remained by the airlock door. And at the center of them all stood Varric, the Alpha, the most dangerous creature on the ship. He inclined his head. It was the gesture one Alpha offered to another. A sign of respect between equals. Between leaders. Between two predators who recognized each other for what they truly were. Yuna returned it. Then she turned and walked into the station without looking back. Behind her, Varric watched until the airlock closed. His second-in-command moved to stand beside him. The older Korath's face was troubled. "What do we do now?" he asked. "About the human?" Varric was silent for a moment. Then he spoke. "Update the threat registry. Humans are no longer classified as prey species." His second frowned. "Reclassify them as what?" Varric thought about everything he had seen. The grip that could crush bone. The technique that could disable warriors twice her size. The restraint that could choose mercy when death would have been easier. The eyes that held no fear even when surrounded by predators. He thought about what she had told him. About persistence, hunting, and nuclear weapons and the long climb from savagery to civilization. About a species that had almost destroyed itself and chose instead to become something better. He thought about what would happen if humans ever decided to stop being kind. "Apex," he said finally. "Dormant apex. They have the power of predators, but they choose not to hunt." His claws flexed involuntarily. Pray they never choose otherwise. His second stared at him. "You truly believe they are that dangerous?" Quote. Varric turned away from the airlock. In his mind, he could still feel the pressure of Yuna's grip on his wrist, still see the cold steadiness in her eyes when she faced him down, still hear her voice explaining how her species had learned to hold back the darkness inside themselves. "I believe," he said quietly, "that humans are the most dangerous things in the galaxy. Not because of what they can do, but because of what they choose not to do. They have the strength to destroy everything, and they spend that strength protecting strangers instead." He walked back toward the bridge. His crew followed in silence. "That kind of power," Varric said to no one in particular, "is more terrifying than any claw or fang, because it means they could change their minds at any moment. And if they did..." He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. In the trading station, Yuna found a human ship heading toward her home sector. She booked passage and settled into her cabin. Her research notes were already uploading to the scientific database. Her report on Korath's social structure would be published within the month. But some things she would not report. Some things she would keep to herself. She pulled out the Korath fang and looked at it. Such a small thing. Such a heavy weight of meaning. Somewhere out there, a young Korath female was growing up with scars that reminded her of a human's choice. Somewhere out there, an alpha was rethinking everything he knew about strength and weakness. Somewhere out there, a species that had been called barely civilized was learning that civilization might mean something different than they thought. Yuna did not know if any of that would matter in the long run. She did not know if one conversation on one ship could really change anything, but she had hope. And hope, she knew, was the most dangerous weapon of all. Because hope was what made humans keep going. Hope was what made them reach for the stars when they should have died in caves. Hope was what made them choose kindness when cruelty would have been easier. Hope was what made them human. And that, perhaps, was the most terrifying thing of all. She closed her eyes and slept. In her dreams, she walked through forests that went on forever. She tracked prey that she never killed. And she felt, deep in her bones, the ancient patient hunger that had made her species what it was. Persistence predators, dormant apex. the most dangerous things in the galaxy, humans,